First thing we got to do, that I want to make sure you guys see this, is replace the output shaft oil seal. This one's really stiff, the only way to describe it. You can still move it, but it's like that's not good. It's very hardened. Okay, it's there we go, that's better, you can see it now. The inside lip of it around here is all really stiff and hard from use, from heat, from oil exposure and whatnot, just due to age. That's the original one. I just started to pry it out. You can see a little tear in it. I wanted you to see how it's starting to come out of the bore, and what I'm using for that, in case you don't have one handy, if you need to get one, is a gasket or oil seal puller. It comes with two different angled ends on it. One's longer than the other, so it changes the angle of attack on the backside of the oil seal. What we're going to do is use the short edge on this one, the short arm, if you will, sorry, and just finish peeling that baby right out of there. There you go. Bob's your uncle. There's the bore. I'm going to clean that up a little bit, and then the new one goes right in, taps right in. Remember to lubricate the lips as well as the outer edge of it as you put it in, so it goes into the crankcase nice and clean. This is the first step of reassembly, and I'm going to do step by step, a small video for each one, and as I'm able to get them done, then I'll paste a few together and make a single video out of it. So right now I've got this lovely cleaned up crankcase here that's been just waiting to go back together, and we're finally getting started on reassembly. I'm hoping that any additional parts I need are going to be available with this COVID situation. I'm seeing a lot of stuff coming up as not in stock, so that's a little concerning. I know that Japan has been particularly hard hit by the COVID situation, so hopefully I've got everything I need at this point to finish the job. So anyway, that's the removal of the output shaft oil seal. We're going to put the fresh one in just a minute. I'll set it up on the tripod here so you can see it, and then we'll move on to the next item. Okay folks, next step is replacing the oil seal for the output shaft, which is sitting over there waiting to go back in, part of my gear train. The output shaft extends out through the output shaft bearing, of course, and we need to clean up the bore a little bit. You can see you got some little bugs in here, need to be cleaned up, so I'm going to hit that with some acetone. And here's the old seal that came out. Of course, it gets damaged in the process of being taken out, so no worries. We've got a brand new one over here ready to go in. I highly recommend, if you don't already have it, get yourself a driver set, a metric driver set. Let me hold it so I can focus it here. Get yourself a metric driver set so that when you apply force to drive this in, you're driving just on the outer rim of the O-ring. You don't want to be putting it in cocked at an angle or damaging it as it goes in. You use the proper tool. I'm going to show you in just a second here. If you use the proper tool, you drive it in perfectly straight into the bore, and it'll sit there like it's supposed to without any damage and not come out when you don't want it to come out. First thing we're going to do though is clean up that bore, and then I'll show you the tool that I'm talking about for driving the oil seal back into place in the bore. Okay, this is a snap-on metric bushing driver set. Had these for a number of years. I can't even remember how long I've had them, at least 20 years. And you see you've got drivers of all different sizes and different metric diameters, and they're marked on the edge of them what size they are. Like this one's a 45 millimeter, and all you have to do is pick the correct one that matches the diameter of what you're trying to drive. You want to be just to the inside of it. Now see, that one's going to be a little too big. I don't think that's quite going to do the trick. So I think this is going to do it. And this would be 53 millimeter. Okay, so there's my oil seal, there's my driver, like so. And you can see how close to the edge it comes all the way around. That's going to give me good support all the way around as I drive it in. I'm holding it by hand here, so it's not as well centered as it should be. Set that down for just a second. And I'm going to have to assemble this tool, and then I'll show you, or I can try to assemble it one-handed. I guess we can go the other way. Okay, once I got my hands free and could see better what I was doing, it's actually the, let's see if it'll pick it up, the 60 millimeter, 55 to 60 millimeter. It depends on which side of the driver you're using, because obviously it's got two different dimensions. This one fits absolutely perfectly in the bore. Fits in there absolutely perfectly, right clean. I mean, there's like maybe a millimeter play. Okay, so when I drive the oil seal, I'm going to get pressure all the way to the edge of the oil seal. So it's going to go in the bore nice and straight. And you can obviously see that. Once I get my tool on it, right out to the edge, look at that, perfect. So when I smack that with a hammer, it's going to go in there nice and straight. Of course, I'm going to lube the edges of the seal before I start doing that, and clean the inside of the bore and lube it as well, so she slips in there as easily as possible. It was already starting to go just then, just from that little bit of weight of the tool on it. So let me clean that up, and I'll put the camera on the tripod so you guys can see that being driven in. Okay, I got the bore cleaned up pretty nicely. That little bit of discoloration you see in there, I think that's a little bit of corrosion that just sort of etched into the steel outside of where the oil seal actually sits. Got her nice and clean. Acetone is great for this purpose. Just use a little acetone on a rag and work it gently. And don't use too much, because you don't want to wash whatever amount of oil or lubricant still inside the bearing here. We don't want to wash that completely out. Even though, yeah, it's going to get hit with plenty of splashes of oil once it starts up, but I don't want it to be completely dry, so I was careful not to let acetone run down inside there and wash lubricant out of the bearing. So now I'm going to take the entire crankcase half, set it up on some blocks so I can apply a little bit of smackaroni to it and not worry about it moving too much, and we'll get that oil seal driven into place. Okay, so let me lube up my bore. Some proper work gloves on here. Not that I mind getting my hands dirty, but actually acids and oils from my hand could possibly attack some of the metal surfaces later on, so plus I work in clean rooms all week, so I'm getting kind of used to walking around with gloves on all the time anyhow. Okay. So I'm going to put just a couple of dabs of my pre-lube in here. And we're going to spread that around with our fingertip. And I'm going to get a little bit of my fingertip. Put that around the edge of my seal. hopefully it'll just drop right into position. There we go. And the key I've found to doing these things is don't be shy. If you've got it squared up, you've got it squared up. So when you're driving it with the tool, don't hesitate, because that's where you end up messing it up, getting it in there sideways. There you go. Almost pushing it into position. It almost doesn't need any help once it's moved up like that. Might have another millimeter or two to go. Although it's fully seated, you still see a gap, so nope, that must be it. I'm not getting any more motion. I'm going to go with that because that looks good. That's all there is to that. There she is, fully seated. You can see there's a very tiny gap just behind the seal between it and the bearing, but it looks like it's evenly in the housing all the way around. Good to go. Next,